Tom is the next Bob Marley, or Tom is the next Bounty Killer, or Tom is the next this. I am the first Vybz Kartel.
The life of Vybz Kartel is becoming increasingly complex by the day. Now he is shrouded in a thin silence, with no glimmer of hope in his vague expectations. Having lost everything that life could offer, he still can't wrap his head around the tragedy that has befallen him in a short while. He is losing it with each passing day, and his former cellmate witnessed how he has become a shadow of himself. Would he ever have the chance to live life again? It seems nearly impossible, as his former cellmate exposes the disturbing, endless struggles that have plagued the reggae star. Stick around as we uncover shocking details. The long journey to honor.
Talia, because she's from Barbados, and when we used to tour Barbados back in the early days, she was just in the audience like everybody else.
Born Adidja Azim Palmer on the 7th of January, 1976, Vybz Kartel's childhood was a bitter experience he never wished for anyone. Growing up for him was more of a struggle for survival, and even if you weren't ready for it, life forced you into it unprepared. He grew up in a wooden house with a zinc roof and water house, which shaped his perception of life. In his neighborhood, living for survival was the only valuable choice, and he too saw it as a way of life and plunged into it without bias. When he was about 6 years old, his family moved to Portmore City, which is just outside Kingston, across the bridge. It was a step away from what he had known, but it was still nothing compared to the life he wanted to live. His father wanted a better life for him and his siblings, but despite his efforts, they could only afford what they had at the time. When he realized that things weren't improving, he considered ways to boost his earnings, and indeed, it worked. By 10 years old, Vybz was already sneaking out to go to dances, which never ended on a good note. His father wasn't in support of it, but his mom was his biggest fan. Even though it wasn't clear to the young Vybz that music was his calling, his mother was already envisioning the future ahead. Over time, he became attuned to the rhythm of music and decided to channel his energy positively. Within a short time, he began to write his lyrics, capitalizing on the fact that he could do it better than everyone else. He knew he had to give his best, as the memories of Waterhouse, where all the greats honed their craft, like Ninja Man and Shaba, lingered in his mind. Soon, his quest for a good life put him in a position where music was his only lifeline, which began a journey that later became global. His passionate pursuit of music was fueled not only by his desire, but also by a desire to prove to his parents that he could succeed, and through it, give them the best life they had always envisioned. While in school, his talent gave him an edge, making him the center of attention every term. He became so famous that he had to balance fame with his talent. From a very young age, he knew he was going to be a star, and pulled all the strings to make it happen. Despite hailing from the rough neighborhoods of Jamaica, he never let his background limit his musical aspirations. That determination drove him to an endless pursuit until he achieved his goals. Rise to stardom.
You know what, I repeat that, them song they are 20 years old, you know, Mr. Miller. Them song they are 18 years old, 21 years old. And that the kids them have vibes too. If you compare me...
Kartel's rise to prominence wasn't an easy journey as it appears to be, but one that shows genuine commitment to how one can rise from the ashes with sheer determination. His career kicked off in his teenage years, and as he grew, he refined his craft to create a melody that appealed to everyone. His career began in 1993 with his first recording, Love Fat Woman, which was released on Alvin Reed's label One Heart, using the moniker Adi Banton, an homage to Buju Banton. From this point, it was evident that his talent would not go unnoticed in the next few months, but one that could turn the whole reggae industry upside down. It wasn't long before his songs brought him some level of influence and popularity, giving him a platform to join the group Vybz Kartel. This three-member group brought solace to the reggae world, with timeless hits that resonated with the human soul. They dropped a few hits together, and just when everyone thought the group was going to last forever, they split, with each member going their separate ways. After the group split, he decided to pursue a solo music career, retaining the group's name. He retained the name Vybz Kartel for himself, and went on to spin hits that shook not just the reggae community, but the entire music world. While he was still a member of Vybz Kartel, he was the brain behind most of their timeless hits, which he claimed to have written over 30 songs, including Gal Clown. He eventually became a protege of Bounty Killer, and after leaving the group, his fame skyrocketed to a height he could never have imagined. However, he tried never to fall into regrets because the journey of pain and betrayal brought out his finest writing. 2003 came with lots of goodies for Kartel, and before he knew it, the world was singing his praises. He rose to prominence so quickly that even his contemporaries were taken aback. This was because Kartel had back-to-back strings of hits throughout Jamaica. The year was one of his best, but it didn't end on a good note, as an unforgettable experience almost ruined all he had labored for years. The year culminated in a pre-planned on-stage clash with Ninja Man at the annual dancehall festival Sting, held in his hometown of Portmore. What started as a joke soon turned violent in despicable ways. It became violent when Kartel's crew members, as well as Kartel himself, threw punches and assaulted Ninja Man on stage. It was so degrading. Nevertheless, Kartel took responsibility for his unusual attitude. While his manager was apportioning blame to Ninja Man, Kartel quickly apologized to Ninja Man and the organizers of the festival fracas. 4 days later, they took a bold step, letting the world know they had buried their differences. They appeared before the press to announce a settlement to end any animosity. Immediately, Kartel focused on his music, churning out a whole lot of vibes that further skyrocketed his relevance. From when he joined his United Kingdom-based label Greensleeves Records, amidst his ongoing career, he released several albums that stamped his name in history, including Up to the Time, More Up to the Time, and JMT. However, as time went by, he saw the need for his label and didn't hesitate to make it happen, as nothing was stopping him at the time, from fame to glory.
And never complained. With the help of prominent criminal defense and human rights attorney Isaac Buchanan, he kept fighting, taking the case.
When he became confident that the time was right for him to launch his record label, Kartel teamed up with his business partner and producer Ainsley Not Nice Morris, and they floated the label Adidjaheim and Not Nice Records. It was a dream come true for the reggae dancehall artist, as he saw it as a significant step toward reaching some of his long-held dreams. They went along for a while, working on some timely hits, but along the line, he took a break to focus on matters that mattered at the time. After ending his stay with Bounty Killers Alliance in 2006, Kartel joined the Portmore Empire, a group of dancehall DJs and singers from his Portmore neighborhood that he signed to his newly founded Adidjaheim and Not Nice Records. This brought back a lot of childhood memories, mainly because he was working with his neighborhood pals, which made the game enjoyable and sweeter. The members included Popcaan, Tommy Lee, Blake Rhino, and Ja Vinci, just to name a few. They sparked a lot of creativity, and Kartel couldn't deny that he was enjoying every bit of his imagination. Kartel's poise for success didn't let him stay in one place. His passionate moves landed him on a platform that further solidified his relevance all over the world. In 2008, Corey Todd, an American businessman, entered into a deal with Vybz Kartel and signed him to an endorsement deal for Vybz Rum. This was a welcome development, as he looked forward to enjoying every bit of his new deal. Soon, their relationship developed into something more substantial, and they moved from casual business partners to deep business partners. Following their acquaintance, they launched Dagger and Condom and Street Vybz Rum, which became one of Jamaica's most notable business ventures at the time. Within a short while, Todd bought Jamaica's most popular dancehall nightclub, Asylum, which became home to their weekly event called Street Vybz Thursday. The show was heard from far and near, and before they could say jack, several partners began to look at the duo so that they could strike a deal with them. However, in a twist of fate, Street Vybz was halted because of a disagreement between Kartel and Todd. They paused their partnership for a while in 2011, and by 2012, they resumed work after smoothing things out between themselves. Even though Kartel was a well-known dancehall reggae artist, he wasn't free from controversies that almost robbed him of his peace of mind. In 2004, his nomination for the UK MOBO Awards was withdrawn for avoidable reasons. It was withdrawn purely based on the controversy surrounding the homophobic content of his lyrics. This meant nothing to him, as he brushed it off as if nothing had happened. 6 years later, he endorsed the Reggae Compassionate Act, a petition organized by the Peter Tatchell Foundation and LGBT advocacy groups to oppose homophobia in music. This raised eyebrows in the reggae community, and many fans wondered if Vybz was now part of the LGBTQ community, but chose to hide under the disguise of good music. Nevertheless, Kartel continued his musical journey, and the more people talked about him, the more he leveraged their thoughts. It even got to a point where Rolling Stone lent its voice to the unusual attitudes flowing from the life of the dancehall singer. They once accused him of promoting a taboo of oral intimacy by singing about blowjobs, an ordeal that the Jamaican authorities were fighting so hard to erase from its environs. It was nothing to be happy about because, according to them, Kartel was destroying the efforts made to tackle this cancer that was already plaguing the country at the time. In September 2011, the National Communications of Guyana banned Vybz Kartel from the airwaves because his lyrics were faulted on many grounds, and this was the first time such action had been taken. He was always finding himself in trouble, and every problem seemed minor compared to the one that would happen later. This was his regular way of life, and even though his music was popular, he didn't try to distance himself from trouble consciously. He did this consistently. Little did he know that darkness was going to envelop him in a very short while. Dark sides of fame.
For the Jamaicans' social state right now, because they all grew up watching Rambo and Commando and Cabra.
Vybz established his name in the reggae community and the world. No doubt, nevertheless, he was written off in the bad books of many, including Mavado. A public feud between Kartel and his former collaborator Mavado erupted in 2006, which was a direct proposition that Vybz over-publicized his departure from the dancehall conglomerate group, The Alliance. What started on a subtle note soon turned into a bloodthirsty conflict that spoiled the relationship that the duo had built over the years. With each passing day, the feud kept getting stronger and stronger, even to the point where several diss tracks were released from both ends. Many thought it would be resolved amicably, but the more they thought, the more their differences kept escalating. Their diss tracks were a pure representation of bottled anger, expressed in disastrous rhythms and lyrics that never meant well for the duo. A call for peace was sponsored, hoping the reggae artists would embrace it positively. However, they were draped in pretense, which only showed in the public eye. But, behind the scenes, it was a tug of war that couldn't be resolved. In March 2007, the fellows appeared in a press conference, where a police officer publicly announced their decision to end their rift. Everyone thought it was over, but they didn't realize it was a strategy to divert attention from the camera, media, and public appearances. 2008 further unleashed the terror breeding in the hearts of the duo, and before anyone could say yeah, they had released several diss tracks. That wasn't enough for them, as they took their beef to the stage, stating to fans at Sting 2008 that their formal peace talks were purely camouflage. By this time, the feud had led to an open faction, with each artist having an army that could bring down a building at a singular command. In 2009, the feud continued, and this time it was going to be supported with no mercy. This whole scenario dominated the Jamaican media and, to a certain extent, Jamaican culture, with the two artists' factions, Gaza Kartel and Gully Mavado, being adopted by Jamaican youths. The rivals were not going to halt for any reason, but sought to end with one person as the victor. Street violence took over the Jamaican territory so much that it turned into a feast of bloodbaths. The tension became stronger with each passing day, and when the authorities could no longer hold it, they summoned both of them. On the 8th of December, 2009, Kartel and Mavado met with the Jamaican Prime Minister Bruce Golding in an attempt to end the feud, but it was more or less pouring water on a camel's back. The Prime Minister saw the need to reconcile these two popular reggae dancehall artists because the feud had engineered mob attacks in some of the inner-city neighborhoods of Kingston. The Prime Minister arranged for them to perform on stage together, which they did, but it didn't resolve the problem at hand. They performed together as a sign of goodwill, but locked up in their hearts were demons waiting for the least opportunity to jump out. The concert, sponsored by one of Kingston's drug lords, Christopher Dudu's Coke, didn't fully achieve its intended purpose, leaving fans with only momentary peace talks. An attempt was made to rekindle the initial spark that bonded the artists together, but it never yielded any positive results. They were slated to perform at a unity concert in March 2010 in Barbados, but this was later cancelled by the Barbadian Prime Minister, David Thompson. Again, the feud continued, leaving everyone with no actual date for reconciliation. While all this was going on, Kartel was having a good time musically, as his songs were topping several charts at the time. In 2009, his song featuring Jamaica's Queen of Dancehall, Spice, debuted on the Billboard Hot 100 Singles chart, and $sign was in regular rotation on urban radio stations in the US. It was something he envisioned, but happening at a time he least expected was a testament that he was a genius when it came to making good music. His 2010 single Clarks was one of his biggest international successes, remaining in the top reggae singles and gaining the most radio plays in North America for 40 weeks. Lifetime regrets.
That was also a terrible day too, because it's fun when she comes, but it's sad when she leaves.
While many thought that Mavado was the only one having an altercation, they were unaware of the ruthless confrontations that existed behind the scenes. This didn't make headlines until a not-so-good situation revealed the darkness that loomed in secret. On the 29th of September, Kartel was arrested and placed behind bars for the sole reason of possessing cannabis. Several investigations were launched immediately, as he had been on the target list of many law enforcement agencies that had scores to settle with him. He was investigated by Jamaica's Major Investigation Task Force, bringing every happening in his life under significant scrutiny. Unfortunately for him, he was linked with the murder of a Jamaican businessman, Barrington Burton, along with conspiracy and illegal possession of a firearm. He was subsequently charged with murder, and within days of his arrest, his life began to be torn apart. While still in prison, in 2012, his book, The Voice of the Jamaican Ghetto, Incarcerated but Not Silenced, co-written with business associate Michael Dawson, was published. Even though he was confined to prison walls, his fame didn't fade a bit but continued to skyrocket. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, but nothing could change the fact that he was incarcerated. Though he was granted bail for the murder of Burton on the 23rd of March, 2012, for $3 million, he remained in prison for yet another alleged grievous crime. He was remanded in prison in connection with the second murder of Clive Lizard Williams of Waterford, St. Catherine. Things were falling apart so quickly for Kartel. Would he ever be able to come out of this? These and many other thoughts plagued the life of the reggae singer. Vybz remained in prison until a date was fixed for his trial. Initially, the trial date was scheduled for the 21st of January, 2013, but had to be postponed due to a lack of jurors and was rescheduled for July 11th. The night for the reggae singer became so long, his worst nightmare suddenly became his reality, and no one knew if he would ever come out of this. On the 24th of July, a jury found Kartel not guilty of the charge of Barrington Burton, but it still didn't change anything because he was still in the custody of the investigation team that had held him so tightly. He was to remain in prison until proven guilty of the murder of Clive Williams. His trial for Clive Williams' murder began on the 18th of November, 2013, and ended on the 13th of March, 2014. Kartel was found guilty by an 11-member jury, and just in a flash, his whole world crashed. Vybz' trial entered into the books of history as the longest trial in Jamaican history, recording an endless 65 days of back-to-back arguments. At this point, Kartel knew he had to face his fears, as there was nothing he could do at this moment. Even if he had all the connections at his disposal, there was nothing they could do. On April 3rd, 2014, Kartel was sentenced to life imprisonment, a sentence that was far more severe than he had expected. His world became numb in a moment. How would he ever live his dreams confined within walls? To make matters worse, there was nothing like parole until he had served a minimum of 35 years. Vybz never longed for this day, but now he has to live with this regret, no matter what he tries, because his fate had already been defined. Behind the walls. Discovery. The moment Kartel realized he had to navigate the tragedy that had hit him, he found a new sense of life and began to live his best life. He knew that this was the only choice he had at the moment, and if he were ever to get anything from his stay behind bars, he would have to shelve the disturbing thoughts of giving up. Despite his incarceration in 2011, Vybz continued his musical journey, releasing timely hits that resonated with several fans in the reggae community. Jamaican prison officials denied any knowledge of the recording, and Kartel himself concealed all evidence that could link him to the recordings. In January 2016, Kartel released his most internationally successful album, King of the Dancehall, which peaked at number 2 on the US Billboard Reggae charts. The album included the single Fever, which topped various local music charts and became his most successful on streaming websites. He continued to make good music, but it was done within the confines of the walls. In January 2020, Kartel released yet another album, but this time it was a 10-track album that explained how much he had lost. Though he dedicated it to his wife Tanisha, it was a pure reflection of how life had dealt with him behind bars. While fans were enjoying Kartel's music, he was going through a lot that only he could explain. Some nights, he found himself lost between the draining hands of regret, crying out loud, but nothing could salvage the irregularities that brought him here in the first place. He kept on living life the best way he could come up with, not minding how life tossed him. In April 2020, a 3-member panel of judges in the Jamaican Court of Appeal reaffirmed Kartel's conviction. With this, a stream of hope flowed through his bones that, finally, he would be getting out sooner than expected. On April 17, 2020, the Court of Appeal reduced Kartel's parole eligibility to 32 years and 6 months, citing Justice Campbell's failure to consider the time the singer wasted in jail while awaiting trial in 2014. It became clearer to Vybz that light had shone on him, but he still had to be patient until he was granted freedom at last. Just as he envisioned, on the 14th of March 2024, Kartel's conviction was quashed by the UK Privy Council due to juror misconduct. This required the Jamaica Court of Appeal to decide if a retrial would take place. By this time, Vybz was often brought into a place of fear because he now had to wrestle with the uncertainty of suspense and reality. On the 31st of July 2024, Kartel, along with Sean Storm Campbell, Kahira Jones, and Andre St. John, were freed after the Jamaica Court of Appeal declined to retry the case, citing expense, the passage of time, and Kartel's declining health, among the many reasons. Finally, at last, Vybz was granted his freedom, but not without the price he paid dearly in the confinement of prison walls. A former cellmate provided the exposé, and to be honest, Vybz may never truly recover from it all. Even though there seems to be a semblance of freedom, deep inside, he is fighting unknown demons that only he can explain. His former cellmate, who chose to remain undisclosed, revealed the life-threatening situations that Vybz Kartel went through while in prison. And for a while, he thought he wasn't going to overcome it. He revealed that Kartel's health deteriorated to the point that life was gradually slipping away from him, yet he couldn't do anything to salvage the situation. He was diagnosed with Graves' disease, a severe thyroid condition that could end in tragedy. He said the last 6 months were nothing but hell for the reggae singer, as he thought he wouldn't make it. With every passing day, he looked pale while concurrently losing strength. According to the cellmate, he feared for his life and rarely believed that the night would usher him into the morning. To further complicate things, the living conditions were never encouraging, with no access to necessities. Life was more complex there. All he wanted was to find a way out, but since it wasn't coming, he was gradually living in a delusion. One of the scariest nights to witness was when Kartel passed out. I thought he was gone, but then his hands moved slowly. That gave me some peace of mind. Kartel is a fighter, and to be honest, he fought his way through. Otherwise, he would have been 6 feet below the earth. Kartel, on the other hand, confirmed everything that his cellmate said. As he narrated his experience to Fox, he said, "I was fading away, plus the fact that most of my sentences I didn't have a toilet. Since Kartel came out of prison, he has been on his best behavior. We hope he has learned his lesson. Sometimes life just has a way of forcing a man's loyalty, and Vybz Kartel learned it the hard way. Hopefully, he can see a life free of too many troubles, but filled with music." Personal life and acquaintances. Not much of Vybz's personal life is revealed, but the little known shows that he is married to his longtime girlfriend, Tanisha Shorty Johnson. They had their child on the 18th of April, 2003, when he was 27 years old. Subsequently, they had 2 other children who made life worthwhile for them. On the 17th of May, 2020, it was revealed that Kartel's 15-year-old son was expecting a child with an 18-year-old girl, making Vybz a grandfather. It was something incredible to witness as he further loved his grandchild with all his might. Just so you know, Vybz Kartel's legacy is not ending anytime soon, as 2 of his sons have followed the trailblazer he paved for them in the reggae community. His sons, Jaheim, known as Lickle Vybz, and Akil Rahim, known as Lickle Addi, have since been dropping hits that have been impacting the reggae community since 2014. Though Kartel survived the destructive stages within the prison walls, he has never been the same. His health has always played tricks on him, and now he has to manage it as the days go by. Since 2016, Kartel has been living with Graves' disease and a heart condition that has never done him any good either. Vybz Kartel is engaged to his longtime partner, Saidem Ozturk, a social worker from London, England. What started as a joke suddenly became a reality when Kartel realized he was enjoying every bit of the relationship. The couple first met in 2015, while Kartel was serving time following a murder conviction. In August 2024, the couple launched a YouTube channel titled Kiss Me Baby, and they have since been having a good time together. Vybz Kartel's journey to fame and his navigation of the darkness that loomed in prison demonstrate that one can endure life's difficulties and survive all that it brings. However, there are lasting effects that come with it, and sometimes you have to live with it forever. Do you think that Vybz Kartel was deserving of all he went through? If yes, please tell us why. Let's hear your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe buttons for more. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.